ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, 2 miles east of the veritable locus of evil on the entire left coast. That would be the Bill Mill, the Capitol building at 10th and L Street in downtown Sacramento, California, spelled with a K, where late at night you can hear the death of common sense. And when I leave the studio at 10:30 p.m., 2.5 hours from now, as I open that door, I will be able to hear the moans of the death of common sense and smell the noxious vapors of evil sulfur and brimstone. You got to belly up to the bar. It's great to see you back. We've kept your seat. I got to tell you this. I think Flackbait is going to be your bartender tonight. He pours with the best of them. The lava lamp is in fact lighted to my left, your right. And I got to tell you this also. We don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our politics. We don't water our conversation. Religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here at the Saloon. Right here. Nothing is sacred. The speech is free, but the booze is not. All that we ask is that you flush the toilet, jiggle the handle. Don't forget to tip your waitress. And then after that, what you do is you ask if we have Alan Thomas on the phone. Alan Thomas, are you there, sir?
Everyone.
There we go. Now we've got him. Welcome and good evening to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening to you. That was great music.
I enjoyed the heck out of it. I scoured near and far to find that, and I thought it was appropriate for tonight. So for the first hour, folks, we're going to have on Alan Thomas, and we're going to be talking to him about his very unique life, very unique individual, and a wonderful individual, and a very good friend of mine. This will be about the 7th or 8th time that he's been on, and I really appreciate each and every time that he's on because he always has something new to talk about. For those who don't know him, Alan Thomas is a Bigfoot, UFO, paranormal, unexplained investigator, researcher, and hunter. And there's very good reason. Oh, hello. Welcome to Alan in chat. Simone, Alaskan, and one viewer who is not going to be unmasked here because that's not what we do. Anyway, Alan has a unique history to him. We're going to be talking about some paranormal things. We're going to be talking about some stuff that's been occurring with him and to him. I noticed that also you've got a new video. We're going to be talking about that. And I want to bring up the topic of your latest video because you've got your own video show. And then I'd like to transition over into the lovely event that will be occurring later on in September, about a month from now, September, I think 20th, 21st, right around in there, called Storm Area 51, which in and of itself, that's just, nobody's going to do that. Well, it looks like the people that thought nothing is going to happen are going to be the people that might find themselves just a wee bit surprised. And I've got more information about that, too. Then the second hour, we'll be talking about an SHR Media special report. What is it that you want from law enforcement? Law enforcement is in a state of flux these days. Is it good? Is it bad? We'll talk about it. And, of course, the concomitant reactions that you're going to have from law enforcement people themselves. And what you get, you really shouldn't be shocked at. But we'll go into depth in that in the entire second hour. Alaskan says, howdy, Clyde. Clyde, by the way, is the Bobcat. And if you are on video, you can see that he's directly above me to the far right. He's bathed in blue. That's Clyde the Berserk Bobcat, for whom the Saloon is named. And if you want to just listen to the show, go to shrmedia.com, get into the chat room where it says listen and chat on the front page, shrmedia.com. Boom, you're going to be in the chat room, and that's where you go for the chat room. If you want to watch the show, it's on the SHR Media Facebook page if you have Facebook. And if you don't, you can go for free to the YouTube channel. SHR Media has a YouTube channel. Go there quick like a bunny. In the field where you go search, put in SHR Media, and playing right now should be this very same show. So 2 ways to watch, 1 way to listen. Alan Thomas, it is great to hear you tonight. How are you, sir?
I am doing great. And how are you? You sound great.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go into something that I necessarily have to. It may cut down about 5 minutes or so of your presentation, but it's important because the Inspector General report came out today about Jim Comey, and we discovered that just as was suspected, Jim Comey is the slime ball that essentially everyone thought he was. In the meantime, there are some things that you're not hearing from this report, or for whatever reason the media is not deigning to tell you. And I had to dig that out, and I have that to prepare for you tonight. Now, some of the things that were revealed in the report is that Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, issued the report today. I think it's 63 or 65 pages, something like that. He discovered a few things, a couple of bullet points. Comey did not seek, James Comey, the fired former FBI director, did not seek authorization from the FBI before providing various memos to his attorneys. He did not seek FBI authorization before providing the contents of the memos through his attorney to a reporter. The IG concluded that Comey's retention, handling, and dissemination of certain memos violated department and FBI policies and his FBI employment agreement. Imagine that. His removal as FBI director indicated that was acceptable. But I can go into this later, and I don't want to get too much into Alan's time. But here's something that I pretty much guarantee that you've not heard. You may hear it on one channel, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, but you may not and probably have not heard it before. What we're talking about specifically with regard to this Inspector General report on James Comey is 7 memos. These were memos that were written by FBI Director James Comey himself. He took 4 of them home as an insurance policy against Donald John Trump. As he did that himself, he himself deemed those 4 memos confidential, not classified. That's, let's see, unethical, yeah, check. Unprofessional, yeah, check. Then only later did we determine that some of them were classified. Stop. One of the first questions you should be asking yourself is, who classified the memos, and specifically which memos became unclassified? Now remember, there were 7 memos total. 4 of them James Comey took home as an insurance policy. So who would have classified the memos? Let's see. There are 4 people that I can think of that I know did, because I dug around for this. These are all people that work in the FBI, worked, past tense, in the FBI. One is Bill Priestep. Oh, he's involved with the Christopher Steele dossier. Then there was FBI Attorney James Baker. Oh, he's the FBI attorney who was caught leaking to the magazine Mother Jones. Then there was Peter Strzok, the paramour of Lisa Page. Both FBI agents who were massively anti-Trump. Those 4, they determined that the 4 memos Comey took home magically were confidential, not classified. The 3 memos Comey didn't take were magically considered to be classified by those 4 people at all. And then the FBI was met with this. None of these memos were classified or categorized in any way, shape, or form until the press got a hold of them. And then after the press got a hold of them, the 4 people aforementioned were the ones that deemed that the memos Comey took home, no problem. They're just confidential. The ones he left behind, well, those were the classified memos. Funny how that works out. Funny how they seem to be morally superior and they can determine themselves that it's just okay to go ahead and destroy as much as humanly possible an elected president, which is why I say that this was a soft coup conducted in the United States of America against a presidential nominee, then a president-elect, and then a sitting president. Okay, enough of that foolishness. Alan Thomas, again, welcome to the show. Would you like to tell the folks where you can be found? You have your very own radio show, and where can folks go to find that?
I have 2 YouTube channels.
Oh, okay, tell us.
I just created another YouTube channel just for drone videos.
Okay.
And I use my drone as a tool to find Sasquatch. So I was trying to come up with a name, and my grandkids are now living with me for a little while, and I'm enjoying the heck.
Okay.
The kids always do. So they named it Sky Squatchin'.
Sky Squatchin'.
Yeah, so if you want to see some Sky Squatchin' drone video, you go to Sky Squatchin'.
It sounds like a Bee Gees song. Sky Squatchin', do-do-do-do-do.
We should write a song.
I know. Here's one of the videos right
look
now.
On the other side of the canyon, all nothing but dead trees over there, too.
This is from Alan's channel, where he's talking about one of the squatchiest places on the planet. And he's
They'll come
driving
back,
there.
Though, if the bark beetles don't eat pine cones.
And that's called Ross Crossing.
There's a gate over there closed, huh?
So what can you tell us, Alan Thomas, about Ross Crossing? Why is Ross Crossing, wherever that is, and if you don't want to tell us because, everybody's got to have their Squatch zone, why is Ross Crossing so squatchy, so to speak?
Well, I never could figure that out. But only I have come to the conclusion that, one, it's secluded, real secluded.
Okay.
There's a lot of granite rock, and for some reason, when there's a lot of granite rock, there's Bigfoots around. And then the main thing that is there's water. It's a creek, a big creek.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it isn't just that place isn't just squatchy. I mean, it's real squatchy. Almost everybody that I talk to that camps there has some kind of story about something weird happening. But there's also been alien abductions and UFO sightings at the same place. Almost everybody that goes there has something happen.
Okay.
So
I won't ask you to tell us where it is specifically, because everybody's got to have their patch to access cool things. But in what county is that? Does that happen to be in Fresno County, by the way?
Yeah, it's Fresno County, and they can Google Ross Crossing and it'll come up, as in a search and show a map. I mean, they can go find it. It's below Dinky Creek.
Oh, so Dinky Creek. Why didn't you say that? Dinky Creek, right. I believe
it is Dinky Creek, but farther down the mountain.
Okay.
Water runs downhill, so Dinky Creek is where everybody thinks of it as, is way up high by some higher lakes like Shaver Lake. But this is down the hill more, a few miles, and they have a big bridge across it and a couple little campgrounds, and it's real secluded. Takes a little while to get there, too. Beautiful place.
Do you have to do a lot of walking to get into it?
No, actually, no. You drive right into the campground, and you're right there. They have fishing, and everything right there. It's not a improved campground, so there's no electricity, no bathrooms, anything like that. But it's a good place.
So you really do have to be like a bear and poop in the woods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring a shovel and a roll of toilet paper. You'd be all right.
There you go. And and watch for the stuff that gives you a rash. Watch out for that, especially when you're going to the bathroom.
Yeah. Definitely watch for that because it's loaded around there with that stuff.
So if you want to find Alan Thomas, go to YouTube. In the search field, put Squatch Zone, SQUATCH Zone, and subscribe to his channel. Hit the thing for notifications. Alan Thomas has 8,100 people subscribed to the Squatch Zone. So kick him up there a little bit. Go to his site on YouTube and check out Squatch Zone. Also, I want to point this out, too. If you guys are on Twitter, you can also find him on @SquatchZone on Twitter. Same thing, capital S, yeah. Squatch Zone, capital Z. And give him a follow there on Twitter as well.
Why, thank you. Yeah, I forgot about Twitter.
You are very welcome. I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to mirror things in video. Myself and Sean, mostly Sean, is working on that so that I can play videos up here on the screen. I can do it partially right now, but the window that you would be looking at is very small, and I wanted to play a UFO video for tonight. I don't know if you have seen Alan Thomas or the rest of the folks that are listening right now, the video of the UFO that's in the clouds. It says, and if you're on Facebook, it says giant spaceship caught during strange lightning storm, July 21st, 2019.
There's the spaceship. You see it? It's right there. Yes, it is. No, it's not. I guarantee it, Veronica. Look at it. No, that's what me. Look at it.
Holy it's pretty spooky.
No, it's not.
Because as the lightning is going off, and there's a ton of lightning.
It's perfect. It's perfectly freaking round.
In the background, as it's illuminated by the lightning and the bolts, and he closes into it, you can see the outline, the dark outline of what, I don't know, to me, looks like a spaceship. Because everything else in the background is occluded or dark or silhouetted like trees in the mountains. And I don't know. Alan Thomas, I don't know if you've seen that video. It looks like a damn spaceship to me.
I've seen that video. It's like a triangle, right?
It looks kind of round to me.
Oh, it's the round one. Okay, there's a whole bunch of them. The triangle one actually looks like the lightning's hitting it.
Oh, okay.
But the round one is just being lit up. But I always wondered, like, if the triangle one was ours, But the round ones, I know they're not ours.
And there are some Delta-shaped craft I'm aware of that are being built right now. Some of those, if you were on your favorite search engine, folks, I think it's the updated version of the B-2 stealth bomber. I think is going to be the B-21, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm recalling properly, that's on a bit of a Delta itself, and those things may have been tested, shall we say, at Area 51, and now there's what people are calling Area 52, which is in Colorado. I wouldn't be surprised if they're testing in both areas. So in any event, let's go back a little bit. I want to get just a tad into your history because it's so unusual and unique. And I've asked you this before, but for the people that haven't managed to listen to you before, you had an issue which required you to go under for surgery, and you died on the table twice. And it was after those two instances that you became more attuned, shall we say, to what's going on around you. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So, Alan Thomas, after you came back from both surgeries back into the real world, what happened to you, or what did you begin to experience?
One of the weirdest things that I noticed right away, something that I noticed was at first was I probably always had this, okay, but I never was tuned into it. You know what I mean? It was
right
there, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to. I really didn't pay attention. Tell you the truth, you think things in your brain, and it's like, oh, that's just all in my head or whatever, But one of the very first things that happened to me was I could see in people's eyes if they're sick.
Really?
And sick to death. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember the news guy. There was a news anchor man, well-known, regular mainstream news, and I think it was Brian. I can't remember, but I was walking past the television. Everybody's sitting there watching him, and I took one look at his eyes, and I knew he was going to die.
Wow.
And I turned around and told everybody in the room, that guy's going to die. And everybody laughed, and then 2 months later he was dead.
Oh man.
And then, I started paying attention to people's eyes after that. And that was my very first thing, that I realized that I could see, and I could still see it today. Pictures. I don't tell people. I even meet people and I see it in their eyes, and I don't know what to say, I don't know what you tell people, but sometimes they're not sick going to die, but some are really sick, and I can tell, and sometimes I can even tell you what's wrong. That's kind of weird. And I don't tell anybody, though. I keep all this stuff to myself, except for if I see it on TV and it's somebody I don't know, and, and there's people in the room, I'll say, hey, that guy's going to die, or he's really sick and I think he has cancer, prostate cancer or something like that. And usually I'm right.
That would be a little concerning if all of a sudden you determine that you've got that ability. Also, late in either mid-July or late July, right around in there, something else happened to you, and you were very close to leaving us again. If I'm recalling this properly.
Yeah. That was a close one. The artery was clogging up again, and so we had to have surgery to unclog it. And then after that, I got even more sensitive. Like I can tell now when I'm walking through this, as I walk through like a mall or down the street or anywhere really, I can feel if there's somebody angry or if they're really sad, or it's really weird. I could pick up on stuff like that. I also could pick up on things that are maybe interdimensional.
Okay.
That's how come I go Bigfoot hunting so much, is I can go into an area and I can even point in the direction of where it would be at. I could feel it or sense it over there. And so far I'm 100% right on those things. And it's a little bit scary, a little bit disconcerting, but I'd rather have that than not know anything, that's coming.
Yeah, that would be a bit concerning. And then it's one of those things where it would appear that you become sensitive and attuned to a lot of other things that are occurring all around us every day. And you're one of the people that apparently is on whatever frequency or series of frequencies those are. And this is why I enjoy kind of talking about this stuff as well. We got about 5 more minutes before the bottom of the hour break. You came out with a show not long ago, maybe a week or so, if I'm not mistaken. It said, let's talk about ancient aliens. And there was something that kind of set you, I can't say set you off, but really made you want to focus that show on ancient aliens. So can you tell us what your thoughts are about ancient aliens?
Yeah, what got me is when you watched, I know everybody's watched that show. It's been on like 11 or 12 seasons. It's a lot of people's favorite show, but only they think people are stupid. You know, why does, when they find the way the pyramids are built and they say, oh, man couldn't do that, man couldn't do that. Well, if you go back and just isn't in the Bible, this is in Egyptian records and everything, people lived 1,000 years. So if you lived 1,000 years and your wife lived 1,000 years and your children lived 1,000 years, don't you think you could build something pretty cool?
Oh,
I mean, couldn't you figure it out? I mean, you could get on a project and put everything into it and have all your kids and friends and grandkids and great grandkids. I mean, you would figure out how to make a plane or a car. I bet there's higher technology then, before the flood, than there is now because of that. And then we're on the slower end. After the flood, we only lived 120 years. So, I mean, it slowly went down. They lived 300 years and then 200 years. And now we're down to like 80 years, 100 years, I say average, I guess. But I think that slowed us down. Then you start a project and you work on it 30, 40 years, and then somebody else has to take over. And if you didn't teach them anything, then they're trying to figure out what you did, and it takes longer, and then I actually believe the brain power was a little bit more, because pre-flood, the Earth was actually smaller, denser, so it had more gravity, so there was more oxygen, so there was more brain size, there, and more oxygen. So when they say you only use 10% of your brain now, it's probably because there's less oxygen saturation. And that's those are a couple of the things. And then on the aliens, I don't really believe they're aliens. I don't believe they came from anywhere. I mean, ultimately they did, but they were kicked to the curb to here. And then they've been here and they live here, and they're interdimensional, so they can pop in and out, and they do everything that they defy all physics, but they're not going anywhere. If they were going in and out, we would be able to see them. The universe, we'd see things, flying in and out, but we don't. They just pop in and out, and they're here all the time. And maybe they couldn't be here until, like, back in the day, the Egyptians and some of them, they did certain rituals, open a portal, and then allowed them to come into our dimension. And then in 1947, they were doing rituals, some of those rocket guys in NASA, and they opened portals. And then after that, there's been UFOs ever since.
We don't have that much documentation. I'm guessing simply because there wasn't that much documentation done before the 30s and the 40s. It was interesting that World War II pilots came across what they thought were UFOs. They weren't called that then. They called them Foo Fighters, which, by the way, is where the group got that name, Foo Fighters. We're going to take a break. We're talking to Alan Thomas. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. When we come back, the phone lines are going to be open. So, folks, if you want to call and talk to Alan, it's 209-284-3210, 209-284-3210. And for those of you who just tuned in, 209-284-3210. We'll be back with Alan Thomas right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic, concealed carry, and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. We're in the first hour of the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media studios, the sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent SHR Media Studios, where we are broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. Customarily, we do politics, and I'll do politics in the second hour. But tonight, we are lucky enough to be speaking to Alan Thomas, who is a Bigfoot, paranormal, UFO, unexplained researcher, investigator, and hunter. He's going to be with us for the entire rest of the hour. If you want to call in and ask Alan a question, the number's on the screen. If you're watching us on video, the SHR Media Network YouTube channel or Facebook page. And if you're not, if you're just listening, area code 209-284-3210, 209-284-3210. And again, Alan, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. You were talking about ancient aliens, and you were also, a lot of folks were talking to you in chat about ancient aliens and also about fallen angels and Bigfoot, etc.
Yeah. The fallen angels, I think Bigfoot has something to do with that. The aliens. There's a lot of reasons why, and I don't know if I should really expand on that, because a lot of people can't handle it at all.
Well, speaking of handling, we have a gentleman calling in. I think it's Mike. Go ahead. What have you got for Alan, sir?
Well, Alan, I don't particularly disagree with you on much about the supernatural and the Bigfoots and stuff like that, other than the fact that what you said earlier about the Earth being smaller before the flood and not after. I think you might have it kind of reversed there, because the dinosaurs existed before, and the plants and the size of the plants and the size of the dinosaurs before the flood was much bigger. I think the Earth was bigger, and the oxygen output was bigger before than after.
Okay.
Well, if you research it, you find out when they described when you get the description of the flood, the Earth completely ripped, and before the flood, there was no oceans. It was all land mass. There was lakes and stuff like that, but there was no oceans. And the Earth ripped open and went like thousands of miles per hour. And you could actually see the seam on Google Earth. And that's where...
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if you look in the middle of the oceans, there's a seam that runs around, and it's deep, real deep in the oceans. So now what I'm talking about is it ripped out, all the water came flying out, really flying out into space, and then gravity pulled it back in, and that was the rain. It wasn't really a storm, the rain, there was a storm and it came and it rained 40 days. The water really came from out of there, and it shot into space and then rained back down on the ground. And then there's huge caverns and all kinds of stuff where the water was, but now it's on top of the Earth. But the Earth actually expanded, and when it expanded, it made less gravity, so that was less oxygen. A dinosaur couldn't live today because the actual amount of oxygen in our atmosphere wouldn't support a dinosaur. And
right.
that's where I was getting at.
Again, you have things like the woolly mammoth, and that happened after that. The woolly mammoth, the short-faced bear, these type of megafauna that happened after the flood, So you got that. But I do agree with you about that. I do agree with you about the projects that happened. I mean, Noah, if you trust the Bible, Noah didn't start to build the ark until he's 500 years old.
Right.
He didn't start having kids. His kids didn't come along until he was 500 years old. you know. So obviously he was able to have kids. His wife, whomever she was able to have kids at that late age. Whereas you look today, well, basically you only have until you're, you know, the woman only has, let's say 38, 39 years old before she's unable to have a successful, you know, child, you know.
Right.
You only have a certain amount of time, whereas back then you could have children into your hundreds and 200s and 300 years old, because not only were they living longer, but probably their biological processes didn't slow down until later, you know?
Yeah, well, I believe that we were actually created to not die. The 1,000-year thing only happened after they got cursed and kicked out of the garden, and then so that I believe we were created to live forever. We actually do. When we die, we go somewhere. You don't die; your body dies, but your spirit goes somewhere. And I went there, and I learned I could travel at the speed of thought, stuff like that. And that really got me digging into this stuff. That's why I research it so hard, is because it was hard for me to grasp that going over to the other side, there was no pain. I could smell, I could feel, I could see, hear. All my senses worked, except I couldn't touch me. That was the weirdest part. But I guess one day we will be reunited with our flesh, like that one guy that he's the only guy that is, you know, that had that happen.
Right. You know, think about this though. You know, you have, you know, we don't, after God, the Bible says God created the world, he said it was all good and he took a day of rest. Now, we don't know exactly from the time when he took that day of rest to the time when the fall happened. We don't know exactly how long that was.
Right.
You know, they say it was a day, but the Bible says a day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day. So we really don't know. So time didn't. In other words, time doesn't start for humanity until the sin happens. You know.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Mike, thank you for that. I got another call on hold. Mike, can I go to the next caller?
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for
Good
the call,
meeting you,
Mike.
brother.
I appreciate it. And second caller, who are you? Identify yourself, and what's your question for Alan Thomas?
Hi, BZ. This is Simone.
Hey, Simone. How you doing?
Good.
Hi, Simone.
Hi, Alan. My question, and I've been trying to type it in chat, is I really think that the stuff that's in the Bible, some of that stuff's been hidden from people too, because they couldn't handle seeing a real alien, they couldn't handle seeing a real Sasquatch, and I think all those supernatural, like Dogman, Sasquatch, all that stuff are just older generations of the fallen angels. And if you could catch a Dogman and run DNA sequence, I think that's what you would find.
Yeah, it does talk about it in a couple of different Jewish books. These things that we see, like Bigfoot, Dogman, stuff like that, were chimeras, and what is it, the half horse, half man, and the one with the alligator head. I mean, it shows a lot of it in the Egyptian drawings, but only you were like in there, you were saying that they like the women and that hasn't changed. Well, that's how those things a lot of those were created. And I believe also they could mess with DNA also, because in it says that they corrupted all things, like all flesh, even animal flesh, you know. But they had babies, but the babies weren't created by God, and there's no place for them. So when the flood happened and killed them all, it talks about that they're wandering around on the earth in dry places. They don't have anywhere to be. They like to They like to take over people's bodies. They like to haunt places. So like when people see ghosts and stuff like that, they're not seeing ghosts. They're seeing these things that are walking around the earth.
Yeah, I thank you for confirming that, because I've been doing a little research on my own, and that's the conclusion I've been coming to as well. And so keep doing what you're doing. It's very exciting. And one other thing, the Greeks, when they talked about the gods and demigods, in Italy and Greece, they don't teach that as mythology. They teach it as history.
Right. Well, it is. I mean, if you go over there, they actually have the tombs of them and the Titans, and those all were demigods. They were all offspring of fallen angels and humans, and they had superpowers, but they could be killed. I mean, people always tell me, oh, they were gods. Well, their god had the eye put out, and then they were mortal, part mortal, so they could die.
Well, they were just stronger and bigger than us. Like I think the giants, the red-haired giants, those are what the Israelites were chasing. When you read the Bible about God saying, when you smite this town, don't take any animals, kill every living thing there. And as they moved forward, that's what forced, I think, those giants into Asia and China, and that's where you get the Yeti and how they came over to the United States. That's kind of what I think has been happening.
Yeah, I think they actually ran. Like, they knew, they couldn't beat these guys, even though they were the humans were the size of grasshoppers to them. They were still getting whooped. So that's whenever you see them making it into South America and stuff like that. One thing that I've been researching a lot, and that's the reptilians or the dragon. You find that in England they had Pendragon. He was the king. And then you go to China and Japan, and they have dragons. And you go to South America, they had, what's his name? I can't even say the name, Kugali Khan or whatever his name is. And he's all painted in there. He was a dragon serpent thing. And then you come to America, and they have the serpent mounds and dragon stories. I mean, this is a worldwide thing, not, anywhere just over here, just over there.
Well, and I think if you read the Bible about Adam and Eve, I think that the serpent she talked to was actually probably the reptilian guy.
Yeah, well, I think that they did more than just talk, but a lot of people don't agree with me. But when they start talking about in the Bible, he knew her, usually means,
conjugally,
more than knowing, you know what I mean?
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
You in the biblical way.
Yeah, and then they talk about the seed and stuff like that. And usually when they're talking about the seed, they're talking about seeds, all right, So, I mean, some stuff you could figure it out. And I don't know all the answers, but I sure love delving into it and chatting about it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on BZ's show, Alan, and keep squatching. I'm hoping you get a chance to talk about some of the things that you've been doing lately at your special place and what happened to your drone when you lost control. Thank you. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Thank you, BZ.
All right. Thanks, Simone, for the call. Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Simone. Appreciate that. The phone line is open if anybody wants to call. And, of course, Jack in chat was giving me crap saying, okay, let's see how good you are, mister, and see if you can conference call this stuff. Well, I don't exactly know how to conference call yet, but because I have X-Lite, I'm going to see if I can figure out. I'm sure Sean showed me a way to do it. I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, but I will figure out how to conference call. I swear it. So anybody, if you want to call, we got about 10 more minutes left in the first hour with Alan Thomas. And again, thank you for being on here tonight, Alan.
Oh, no problem. You know, like talking about that drone flight. Now I've flown the drone, and I only use it for Bigfoot hunting. So I've flown it quite a bit, and then we went to what we call the spot, and that's where we got Bigfoot DNA. We had the windows where they drooled on the windows or snot on the windows.
Oh, right, the one with you and Jeff.
Yeah, this last time we were there, as we were setting up our camp, a tree fell, a big tree, you know, and we thought, oh, well, you know, there's trees falling, you know, but that was cool to hear it fall. And we thought that was pretty cool. Then another one fell, and we were inside the tent setting up the electronics, and I looked out the door just in time to see it fall. And I watched it fall, and it was only 10 feet from the one that fell prior.
Okay.
Like 30 minutes probably went by, and then the second one, and we both actually saw that one fall. And then about 45 minutes later, we weren't in a position to see it, but another one fell in the same, you know, like 10 feet or 20 feet, 3 trees.
Okay.
And at first it was like, yeah, trees fall in the forest, you know, and do they make a noise? And we were laughing about it. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. They make a big noise.
Yeah. Then we got to see one. It was like, oh, that is so cool, but why? And it did make noise. It did make noise too, but why was it so close to the other one? That's weird, you know. Then the third one fell in the same spot, and it was like, okay. Yeah. I mean, we're talking 150-foot trees falling over, big ones. And it was like, oh, man. So the next morning, I'm going to go. I want to see. I'm not really good at hiking and stuff, but I got my drone out, and I'm going to fly over, and I'm going to look at these trees.
Okay.
As soon as I got over the area where the trees were, I lost control of the drone.
Now, does that mean it was out of range or out of battery?
No, it was only 75 feet distance away from me.
Okay, so that's not range.
Yeah, and then it was about 280 feet up, and I've flown it even higher than that. I could see the drone. There was nothing in between me and the drone, but my screen kind of darkened, and I couldn't move the camera. I couldn't turn or do anything, but the drone was doing things. It moved the camera. It kind of went up and down a couple times, and then it started flying, and then all of a sudden it said, going home, and it came and it landed right back in the spot that I took off from, and I didn't do it. I didn't have any control. I even was running, like I was trying to get under it to see if I could get control, and I couldn't get control. Now, since then, I've flown it at Ross Crossing, several other places along the Kings River, and I have never lost control. And I've flown it far, you know, like half a mile away from me, and never lose control. So I won't fly that one spot anymore.
So what do you think you attribute that to? What could be a possibility?
You know what? I don't know. All I know is when we went 2 weekends in a row, and there was some kind of shadow being that we caught on camera the first.
Oh, near the stump.
We went.
Near the stump, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a feeling it had something to do with that, because I think that was more alien or, you know, interdimensional beings right there. And I think they're the ones that were messing with us with the drone and our electronics, because our cameras are loose batteries too. Phone, I mean, everything was wonky.
Like me, that's the technical term, wonky.
Yeah. That is the technical term.
It is. Hell yeah, it's the technical term. Come on, folks. Hey, we got about.
It was cattywampus.
That's even better. That's multisyllabic. I like that a lot better. We got about 5 more minutes before the end of the show. Alan Thomas, I'm looking at an article from the Washington Post of all places, and it says
infrasound.
Infrasound. Ah, there we go. Okay. The article says 500,000 people signed up to storm Area 51. What happens if they actually show up? Well, things have happened since then. Now, a couple of points I've noticed. A rural Nevada county has now decided that it's drafted an emergency plan. It's gone ahead and approved 2 festivals. On a couple of Mondays ago, the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners drafted an emergency declaration for that county. As part of the process, they think that it's possible, Alan Thomas, if you can believe this, they think it's possible 35,000 to 40,000 people could show up. And they said, quote, yeah, this is serious.
It's going to be serious. And people, I was thinking about going. I got invited. Only think about it. Okay, you're out there, Area 51. You're going to be in the middle of the desert. There's no gas
Exactly.
station. There's no electricity. There's no place to buy food. If you get jacked up, you're jacked up out there. And if the government wants to mess with you with maybe infrasound or some other technology that they have, you're a sitting duck. So I'm not going.
I think you make an excellent point about the lack of infrastructure, and that's what it was. Lincoln County. Now there's a second county, Nye County, NYE. They signed an emergency declaration because these are departments like the Nye County and Lincoln County Sheriff's Department have maybe 10 to 15 to 20 people on them, period, end of statement. And as you say, they're in the middle of nowhere, absolutely nowhere. So, folks, if you're really thinking about going out there, I would have a think again, because you're not going to find water, like Alan points out. You're not going to find easy fuel. And if you happen to drop into any of these teeny-weeny little towns that are around there, like Rachel, for example, they're not going to be happy to see you.
No. They're not going to have enough water.
No.
Like, if there's thousands of people, they don't have, I don't think they have the resources to be, unless they take out a loan on their property, but I don't think I don't think they can actually fully prepare for 1 million people or more.
No.
That's a lot.
The smallest estimates that I've seen in the media have been 5,000 to 10,000 people. Other articles have said 20 to 35,000 people in the middle of nowhere. People have to eat.
Well,
people have to drink.
150,000 signed that they were going to go rush the gate.
Yeah.
So
Jack Alexander in chat says it'd be fun to go and watch the Storm Area 51 Raiders get rounded up.
I think so too. Only I think that you might be a sitting duck still. If you're in the area or near where you can see it, I think you might be prone to, bleed over whatever,
Don't go. I think the bottom line is pretty simple, folks. Don't go. So, Alan Thomas, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. I greatly appreciate it. Tell folks where they can watch your show and the main YouTube channel, and you have a secondary YouTube channel.
Right. I have a main YouTube channel is Squatch Zone, and that'll be for just about everything. And then I have Sky Squatchin'. That'll be all the drone videos until I get my 107 license. And then after that, I'll start putting them right on my Squatch Zone too.
Okay. Now, what's a 107 license?
They decided that if you can earn 1 penny on a video,
okay,
then you have to get a FAA pilot's license for drones, and it's like $175.
Ow!
For that. And you have to take a pilot test And I heard it's just like if you're going to fly a plane, like a pilot test. So you have to know all the weather and you have to, all the terminology, everything about it. So I heard it's a pretty rough test, 3 hours or something like that. And so what they're doing is they're weeding out people that just want to throw up a million, throw videos up on YouTube and monetize it and make money off they're going to make you get a license. And I already got told already. I put a clip of a YouTube video with a clip of the drone video, and I already got contacted by the FAA and warned and told that I have to get, that's why I created the other channel. And then I asked the guy, hey, how did you find me out of all the millions of, YouTube channels? How did you just pick me out with this little, 22-minute clip or whatever it was? And he said, well, it's the other people that have licenses. They watch for people putting videos up and then they turn you in if you don't have a license because they had to get one. I was like,
Lovely.
I see.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Like the East German Stasi. Great. Now you've got the Stasi people narking you out. Wonderful. Great. Good to know. Good to hear. Yeah.
Isn't that how it always is, though?
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to get a drone. Not so much anymore. Alan Thomas, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're going to have you on again, obviously. Do you have another show planned in the not too terribly distant future within about a week or so? Anything that you're thinking about putting out?
Probably tomorrow or the next day, I'm going to come on with one. I have some ideas. I'm not sure. I have 2 topics that I want to dig into, and I'm not sure which one yet.
Okay.
But it'll be Sasquatch for sure.
Okay, folks, go to YouTube, Squatch Zone, and subscribe to his channel, and then hit notification so that if a video comes up, you can watch it and you get sent a notification. You can, hey, Alan's on. It's time to watch him. So thank you for being here tonight, Alan. I greatly appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, and then I do it live, so you can come in the chat room and chat with me and argue with me.
Yeah,
and
there you
call
go.
me names and do all that stuff. I love it.
All righty, sir. I thank you ever so kindly.
Eugene.
And we will have you back.
Okay, and I'm going to have you on one day.
Please.
Pretty soon here.
Please.
It would be great. We'll talk politics on the Squatch Zone. That'll be really fun.
That'll be weird.
Yeah, but I'll love it because that's conspiracy theories. Hey, we do that stuff.
Yeah, I do that. I do that too. All righty, thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it. Take care. Folks, we're going to hit a break, and when we come back, it'll be an SHR Media special report about what really do you want from law enforcement? And I think it's an excellent question, and I'll show you why with any number of illustrations about the state of law enforcement today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is the second hour of the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media studios, where I'm broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast. That's the Bill Mill, the Capitol building in Sacramento, California, at 10th and L Street. Now, we're going to go into an SHR special report, but before we do that, I also have a special Ron Edwards notebook.
After 60 years of systematic indoctrination, many Americans are failing in life, not because of a lack of opportunities, but rather a negative attitude. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, perhaps the inspirational words of Minister Chuck Swindoll will encourage a more virtuous approach to life's many setbacks. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than the facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than success, than what other people think, say, or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, or a home. The remarkable thing is that we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play a very important string we all have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. I'm Ron Edwards. Please check out my brand new website, theronedwards.talkspot.com, and let's meet again on another page from the Edwards Notebook.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Now that's new. I didn't know that Ron Edwards had a new spot. ronedwards.talkspot.com. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. And Ron, if you're listening, I still need a new promo from you, dude. I'm putting out a new promo pack very soon for SHR, so I would love to have a promo from you. In the meantime, we're going to do this.
This is an SHR Media Network special report.
Tonight, for the rest of the hour, and perhaps a little bit of overtime, we're going to be talking about law enforcement, not just in California, but also throughout the nation, and most recently also about New York City and what's been occurring there. You need to ask yourself a question. As an individual, as a community, as a state, and as a nation, what is it that you really want from law enforcement? And I've said for years that people get the kind of law enforcement that they deserve. I said that when I was in patrol, and I still say that now. It's kind of like the Talking Head lyrics in Burning Down the House, where he says, watch out, you might get what you're after. So watch out, folks. You might get what you're after. I make this notation in reference to the NYPD's firing of Officer Daniel Pantaleo on Monday, August 19th. And that was resulting from the July 17th death of Eric Garner on Staten Island. And the article indicated NYPD fires Officer Daniel Pantaleo for chokehold in Eric Garner's death. We're going to go into this in great detail tonight. An administrative judge earlier recommended that Pantaleo be terminated. Garner's death, which sparked national protests, occurred on July 17, 2014. The New York City police officer seen on video using a chokehold during Eric Garner's deadly arrest 5 years ago sparked protests, was fired by the department on Monday. But wait, there's more. And of course, knowing me, we'll get to that. NYPD Commissioner James O'Neill said he'll enforce an administrative judge's recommendations made this month that Pantaleo be terminated, and he was terminated over the July 17th confrontation from Garner. Pantaleo, who has been with the NYPD since 2006, was suspended as soon as that department's verdict was reached, and O'Neill said it is clear that Daniel Pantaleo can no longer effectively serve as a New York City police officer. To me, not just saying it in a knee-jerk fashion, and I will go into my explanations here, to me, it would seem that this is yet, unfortunately, another officer kicked to the curb due to politics. And when I say that, yes, I'm going to provide numerous citations and reasons for my thoughts about that. I will elaborate and I will elucidate, because the implications then and now are still rather massive. But here's the caveat. Minutes after the police commissioner announced his ruling on Monday, Lynch said O'Neill had permanently lost the confidence of officers on the beat. And this has a great deal to do with officers on the beat. Now, there is a PBO individual who said the NYPD will remain rudderless and frozen, and Commissioner O'Neill will never be able to bring it back, Lynch said in a statement. Now is the time for every police officer in this city to make their own choice. We are urging all New York City police officers to proceed with the utmost caution in this new reality in which they may be deemed reckless just for doing their job. Well, at first blush, okay, yeah, they're doing their job. But again, there's a lot more to it than that we will cover tonight. They said, we will uphold our oath, but we cannot and will not do so by needlessly jeopardizing our careers or personal safety. Hold that thought as well. NYPD officer Daniel Pantaleo has been through every horror show ride imaginable. His actions have been examined by every city, every county, every state, and federal microscope extant. And despite that, not one prosecution was recommended. A Staten Island grand jury declined to indict Pantaleo, and this summer, the Justice Department said it would not bring federal civil rights or criminal charges against him. Why not? Because after all, let's admit that it would certainly have been convenient and politically expedient to recommend Pantaleo for every possible prosecutory venue extant. It would have satisfied any number of communities involved, both local and national. Would it have not? Of course it would. Let's not just forget, however, that cops don't find themselves exposed to only double jeopardy. No, and this is an absolute nirvana for leftists, they can be tried criminally. They can be tried civilly. They can be prosecuted by the federal government, which pays attorneys, by the way, to do so under 42 U.S.C. 1983. And they can face entirely separate administrative repercussions like Pantaleo. It kind of sounds like quadruple jeopardy to me. For doing his job. For responding to calls for service. Why didn't all of these various potential prosecutions come to fruition? Could it be that the fact patterns had something to do with that? See, the law of physics still remain. Those laws exist on a physical plane and on a human plane, and I would remind you of them. A body at rest is going to remain at rest, and a body in motion is going to remain in motion unless it's acted upon by an external force. Who do you think those external forces may be? Another one, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That happens to be the most important. There's a third law that does not apply. So true, we're discovering in a societal fashion that these things are occurring, and there are implications. You can't denigrate the importance of a civilized, organized, policed society advancing the rule of law and then complain when magically somehow it becomes none of that. Nor would you ever want the proverbial, and I never did and I never would, want the proverbial cop on every corner, because that becomes, naturally, Big Brother and 1984. There has to be, and there is, some kind of a happy medium, which now, unfortunately, seems to be far from sight. You know, in law enforcement and in general, we talk about pendulums and cycles. Because in my 7 decades on the planet and my 45 years as a sheepdog in law enforcement, I've seen a whole bunch of it all. I've done a whole bunch of it all. I've watched a whole bunch of it all. I've heard it all, experienced it all. I paid for it in a marriage. I paid for it in blood, injuries, psychologically, and with alcohol. Yeah, Kettle One. Yet I find myself actually a little bit surprised and massively disappointed by today's state of law enforcement. And I have to admit, I should have, damn me, for not, I should have seen, but I truly didn't see law enforcement caving to leftist politics as much as it has. The gene pool for law enforcement and law enforcement administrators is no different than the gene pool that surrounds every locale. If it's weak, guess what? You get weak cops. If it's leftist, guess what? You get leftist cops. Gene pool, baby. Now, I wrote a post at bloviatingzeppelin.net about the limp-wristed and leftist Berkeley Police Department. The likes of which stood down in the face of Antifa, leftist Antifa rioters. They were doing this directly in front of Berkeley PD, about a block away. Their chief told them to stand down, directed so by the Berkeley mayor, no more, no less, and the abysmal Berkeley PD officers. They did just that. They disgust me. For perspective, all we have to do is go back to LAPD and Rampart in the 1990s. That lovely time was acquired when hiring standards plummeted due to the dearth of appropriate candidates, and LAPD, just like about every other California law enforcement agency, lowered its hiring standards. There's a delay in corruption because, as indicated by the IACP, they wrote a report about this, it takes a few years for those persons to become sufficiently familiar with the cop system and feel comfortable with gaming it. Gang members, ties to death row records. The kingpin of Rampart, by the way, I should remind everybody because leftists consider this to be so imperative. The kingpin of Rampart wasn't some Caucasoid, it was a guy named Rafael Perez. Whoa. Hold up on that car wash, BZ. I guess that means, as I said, you truly do get the kind of law enforcement you deserve. Or accept. Stop. Law enforcement agencies get sued due to 3 primary failures or exposures: negligence in hiring, negligence in training, and negligence in retention. Are we starting to see that now? Everything is cyclical, folks. Everything. Here's an article, as you would expect, from the New York Times. And the headline says it all. Daniel Pantaleo was fired. We're still afraid for our lives. 5 years after Eric Garner's death, it's painfully obvious that the daily anxiety Black and brown people experience is justified. Last week, when the officer who had held Eric Garner in a band chokehold, as he said, "I can't breathe," about a dozen times, was still employed by the New York Police Department, I was thousands of miles away in Arizona, where I found myself terrified by a different set of law enforcement officers. I was returning from a friend near the Mexico border. I was driving up State Route 90, where all northbound traffic was diverted into a giant tent where officers were CBP, Customs and Border Protection, were performing cursory inspections of all vehicles. Okay, stop. I get it. That's something that I don't personally agree with, checkpoints. But that's a discussion for another time. But he continues to write, as a black journalist who has been reporting as police officers lobbed tear gas and used sound cannons in Baltimore, Ferguson, and New York, and simply as a black person living in America, my experience in Arizona reminded me of how very real the stress of living under occupation is for black and brown people. Such stress, of course, takes a mental health toll and likely contributes to rates of hypertension and heart disease that create John Henryism, a term Dr. Sherman Jones, an epidemiologist, coined while trying to understand why black men die younger than white men. So, blacks live under occupation, according to this journalist, air quotes, in the United States of America. Okay. Well, BC, what about you? I've been stopped by CHP a bunch of times. A couple of them were for bogus reasons. I was an EVOC instructor after all. I was stopped by SAC PD for no reason. I was stopped by a drunk CHP officer on I-5 in 1986 for going over the limit by about 2 miles an hour. This dude reeked of alcohol. His hair was askew. The dude was a mess. I believe the only reason that I was let go is because my then girlfriend had G-cup breasts, and which he ogled, by the way. And I've been stopped a bunch of times by law enforcement, and I am as cockazoid as the driven snow. So I've been stopped is your clarion call. Boo fucking who? Get in line. Do you know what I do that's different from a lot of people when stopped? I pull to the right, cautiously, and in an area that's safe for the officer. I don't stop on the left. I don't stop on freeway ramps. I roll down every window. I keep my hands on the steering wheel. I don't make any movements. I let the officer set the tone and the contact. At night, I turn on the overhead cabin light. I say, "Yes, sir," and I say, "No, sir," and lots of that. And when I'm armed, that's the first thing I say. And both of my hands are out the driver's side window, and I stay in the car unless he or she tells me otherwise. So today, could something bad potentially happen to me? Yes. If I did something stupid. No one knows me anymore out there. No one cares about me anymore. Melanin count, especially in a car with tinted windows, melanin count doesn't mean crap anymore. You act, cops get to react. Well, maybe this is correct.
Myself often worry that we might be a victim of police brutality. So, as a public service, the Chris Rock Show proudly presents this educational video.
How to not get your ass kicked by the police.
Have you ever been face to face with a police officer and wondered, is he about to kick my ass? Well, wonder no more. If you follow these easy tips, you'll be fine. First, obey the law. Laws were made for a reason. Think of them as hints. You've heard people say, man, I wouldn't do that shit if I was you. Well, here's some of that shit. Carjacking, armed robbery, arson, selling drugs, buying drugs, stabbing, shooting. You know, you probably won't get your ass kicked if you just use common sense. If you jump a subway turnstile, you might just get off with a warning from the police. But if you jump a turnstile carrying a loaded gun and smoking a joint, then maybe you need your ass kicked. We all know what happened to Rodney King, but Rodney wouldn't have got his ass kicked if he had just followed this simple tip. When you see flashing police lights in your mirror, stop immediately. Everybody knows, if the police have to come and get you, they're bringing an ass kicking with them. Here's a no-brainer. If you're listening to loud rap music, turn that shit off. Blasting "fuck the police" while you're getting pulled over by the police is just ignorant. When an officer approaches your car, be polite.
Is there a problem, officer?
And stay in your car with your hands on the wheel.
What the fuck you want, motherfucker?
No.
Unless you want your ass kicked. Want to give a friend a ride? Not so fast. Your friend might be crazy. Now, before you let your friend in your car, ask them these questions. Do you have a gun? Do you have drugs? Do you have any warrants? And in case you do get pulled over by the cops,
License and registration, please.
remind your friend to do this one thing. Shut the fuck up.
Man, don't give him shit. What the fuck you want?
No.
If you have to give a friend a ride, get a white friend. A white friend can be the difference between a ticket and a bullet in the ass. Here's a tip you should never forget. If your woman is mad at you, leave her at home. Because a mad woman will say anything.
He got weed! He got weed!
If your woman is mad at you, there's nothing she'd like to see more than you getting your ass kicked.
That's right! Kick his motherfucking ass! Take a dummy, shut up no more! Take a weed too! He got weed! He got weed!
Now let's review. Obey the law. Use common sense. Stop immediately. Turn that shit off. Be polite. Shut the fuck up. Get a white friend. And last but not least, don't ride with a mad woman. If you follow these simple pointers, you probably won't get your ass kicked by the police.
Perfect. And with that, we're going to go to a break, come right back, and we'll have more information for you about what is it that you really want from law enforcement.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics,
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
and all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes the show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you're listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct from the SHR Media Studios, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. This hour is an SHR Media Network special report, What Do You Want from Law Enforcement? And I'm using quite a number of illustrations to indicate my point is we really do need to ask ourselves, what is it that we want from law enforcement these days? And what can help? What are some of the solutions? It would seem that most deaths from law enforcement come down to what I consider to be a remarkably simple equation. One that most people are not really interested in minding, however. It's much simpler than Newton's laws. It's about compliance versus resistance. And so when you have a multitude of brackets and organizations and movements and political groups and communities and media, social mores, and even the administrators of various law enforcement agencies, when they insist upon resistance or tacitly condone it, we're discovering this makes for a brew of terrible consequences, not unlike the Ferguson effect. And I would guess that most of you have an idea what that is. Well, not like the Ferguson effect, precisely the Ferguson effect. And it's all around the United States right now. Back we go to NYPD. Let's examine the Eric Garner case and why it's critical not only to the NYPD but to law enforcement in general, because some decisions have to be made, not only in terms of law enforcement, but in terms of the overall thinking regarding the crafting of laws itself. Well, gosh, BZ, what are you saying with regard to that? The background of the Eric Garner case was this, basically. You have a very large, obese black man, Eric Garner, 6'3" and about 370 pounds, who's selling what the city of New York calls onesies. These are cigarettes sold singly, out of a pack, not in a pack, without tax stamps, outside of a store known as a bodega in New York City on July 17th of 2014. Now, when it's written, quote, without tax stamps, that means the city of New York is removed from the tax revenue stream it demands on cigarettes. So here's a guy selling individual cigarettes that folks can purchase tax-free, specifically so that people avoid paying taxes. He's doing this directly in front of a store where the owner has to pay tax on every cigarette pack he sells, and the owner doesn't get the luxury of selling them individually. That's undermining the store owner, who is abiding by the law, imagine that, paying taxes. The city of New York not only declares that unfair, but illegal as well. So here's where I make one very critical distinction that will come into play in a moment. The cops don't create the laws. In this case, the city of New York did. At issue is the use of force by the NYPD in terms of a guy who was breaking the law, albeit not regarding a felony, but it's a crime nevertheless. And let us not deal in generalities or phrases or social justice warrior chants, as leftists and Democrats, as I call them, are wont to do, but actual issues at hand. Real-time and immediate solutions to problems cops find themselves facing on the street every day. Decisions that have to be made in seconds. And they don't have luxury, the massive luxury of months of deliberation. What leftist organizations failed to disclose was a common grievance for that area. NYPD didn't just happen to be there. Citizens had complained about persons circumventing the law, and specifically in front of their stores. The city of New York had decreed that it must have its own Tybalt-like pound of flesh. Okay, so meanwhile, Eric Garner's arrest record, which very few people note, with the NYPD indicated a frequency of more than 30 times since 1980 for assault, resisting arrest, and grand theft. And it was even the New York Times that wrote that many of these arrests had been made for selling untaxed cigarettes. What a shock to find that behavior continuing. Here's CBS coverage of that.
News has learned that Attorney General William Barr made the ultimate call to not bring federal charges today against a white New York City police officer in the chokehold death of Eric Garner, a man whose last...
Okay, you'll notice that it's a white police officer, no mention made of the melanin count of Eric Garner.
His words were, "I can't breathe." Jeff Begays tonight on Barr's decision and the anguish it's causing his family.
But he was killed on the streets!
Moments after hearing the decision, Eric Garner's daughter stormed out of the federal courthouse.
Federal cops don't want to prosecute. Nobody wants to hold nobody accountable.
5 years ago tomorrow, NYPD police officers confronted Eric Garner over allegations he was illegally selling cigarettes in Staten Island. The arrest was captured by a cell phone camera. Within seconds, Officer Daniel Pantaleo had wrapped his arms around Garner's neck.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Garner's cries of "I can't breathe" 11 times are among the last words he spoke before his death. Today, federal prosecutors said the videotape alone was not enough to prove the officers had committed a federal crime.
And the evidence here does not support charging police officer Daniel Pantaleo or any other officer with a federal criminal civil rights violation.
Garner's mother, Gwen Carr, has called for the officers to be held accountable.
This is an outrage, an insult to injury. You killed my son, and you won't get away with it.
But guess what? Like everything else, there's more to the story, isn't there? More to the story that you likely haven't heard. More to the story that I'm going to tell you about very shortly. So let's examine these things further. Okay, much further than leftists would certainly have you examine. Let's look at the size of Garner as compared to the officers around him. If you've seen the video before, they had some options. They had a bunch of options when people failed to comply. You could have used chemicals or batons or striking moves, even deadly force if the attempt to disarm the officers or acquire their weapons occurred, which luckily he didn't do. Oh, unlike Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, upon which an entire lie was built, hands up, don't shoot, and Black Lives Matter was created. I've said it here before, I'll say it again. Yeah, predicated all upon a lie.
Media narratives are having a tougher time these days, so it seems anyway. But don't make the mistake of confusing weakness with defeat. They're far from being defeated. And the horrible, irresponsible coverage of the Michael Brown shooting and the absolute lie of hands up, don't shoot, which led to the burning of a city twice and 2 cops getting shot. And an elderly gentleman being beaten with his own oxygen tank. All are perfect examples of this. MRC TV has a new video that they're launching first right here on this program, cataloging what happened in case one of your Facebook friends is still repeating those debunked mantras. Watch this.
After 7 months of investigations and protests, it turns out that hands up, don't shoot apparently never happened.
No, but it was convenient.
I recognize
George
that
Will.
The findings in our report may lead
Eric
some
Holder.
to wonder how the department's findings can differ so sharply from some of the initial widely reported accounts. Yet it remains not only valid, but essential to question how such a strong alternative version of events was able to take hold so swiftly.
Outrage in Ferguson, Missouri after police shot and killed an unarmed teenager Saturday afternoon.
Say hands up, don't shoot.
You to know that our hearts
Black Lives Matter.
Hands up, don't shoot. Are out there marching with them.
His hands were up.
The execution of Michael Brown.
A very public body of evidence.
When he turned and faced him and put his hands up.
Putting their hands up, don't shoot.
Where are all the white people who reach for guns? Hands up.
Amounts to an execution.
Hands up.
No justice, no peace.
Michael Brown was executed.
It looks like they might have killed another unarmed black teen. Don't shoot.
Michael Brown was shot and murdered.
Let people peacefully protest the murder.
What seems to me to be a cold-blooded murder.
Don't shoot. Hands up. Don't shoot. Hands up.
Murder. They were never after the truth anyway.
They were never after the truth. Great video. Dan Joseph of the Media Research Center joins me now to not only talk about the ridiculous narrative building from the media, but also how in some areas like MSNBC's ratings, they're being defeated. Dan, it's so good to see you. Great video. And this, St. Louis is my hometown.
Let's stop it right there and let's continue. Let's move on. What they decided to do, however, the officers in that instance with Eric Garner, is utilize numbers. It was an attempt to overpower an individual who clearly was much larger than every other officer present. And further, positional asphyxia comes into play. This is something the suspect brought to the table, not the officers. The suspect acted. The officers can only react. And what didn't they use? Oh, they didn't use chemicals. What didn't they use? Striking motions. What didn't they use? Batons. They used numbers. The suspect acted. The officers can only react. But even before we get into those details, which are very important, let's examine the overall situation in the first place. NYPD either made an on-view notice of a crime, the selling of illegal cigarettes, or they were sent there by a dispatcher. It really doesn't matter which one. They confronted the person involved. He either complies or he doesn't. The initial action is his to make. The officers gauge their reaction to his. They only know he's big, really big, and he isn't complying. How about this, folks? Let's say this is a misdemeanor, and let's say Eric Garner resists. If you're in charge now, you are in charge of NYPD, leftists, you, anybody listening, what do your officers do now in the face of resistance? Do they, as many citizens seem to demand, do they simply evaluate his quotient of resistance and determine not to engage, and they walk away? What if the officers write a citation? Because we don't want to engage him, and okay, we can write him a ticket, I guess. We could write him a summons, and we tell Eric Garner to sign. What if he refuses to sign a summons? Do they walk away in the face of that refusal? I mean, come on, all right, these were cigarettes. It's not like he murdered anybody. They should have just walked away, right? Stop selling cigarettes. No compliance. Sign the citation. No compliance. You're now under arrest for NYC code blah, blah, blah. No compliance. this would be the perfect time for the officers to turn around and walk away, right? Wouldn't it? Maybe take his name and submit for, I don't know, an arrest warrant later. Wouldn't that be logical? Wouldn't that be the smart thing to do? Okay, give me your name. No compliance. What's your date of birth? No compliance. What's your address? No compliance. Give me some ID. No compliance. There. Okay, the NYPD officers should simply have walked away because, of course, everyone could see the potential for escalation at that point. By this time, though, everyone on the street is watching you, everyone in the neighborhood. Do you back up your lawful demands? Do you engage, or do you just walk away? Here is some evidence of walking away.
New York City police being doused with water are sparking outrage. The footage was taken in Brooklyn over the weekend. Police were responding to a call about a disorderly group. At one point, someone poured a bucket of water on an officer. A similar incident was captured in Harlem. Officers were making an arrest when they were pelted. One was hit on the head with a bucket. NYPD Chief Terrence Monahan called the videos reprehensible and encouraged New Yorkers to treat officers with respect. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio also condemned the incidents. No arrests were made in either cases, but the NYPD is investigating.
NYPD is investigating. Well, that was one case. Then I think there was this one also.
2 New York State Assembly members will announce proposal new legislation making it a felony to douse police officers with water.
It comes as new video has emerged of another such incident in the city. CBS 2's Alex Dennis here with more on this story for us. Alex?
So happened again this month, and now police are asking for your help. The video shows a suspect spraying water at officers while holding a phone, appearing to record video of the incident. You can see the gentleman here that they are looking for. The man seen here was tossing bottled water at 2 NYPD traffic enforcement agents in Queens. It happened last Wednesday at 86th Street and Jamaica Avenue in Woodhaven around 2:30 in the afternoon. This is not the first time police have dealt with this type of assault. Earlier this month, video surfaced showing people dousing police officers with water there as well. Lawmakers want to be clear. This crime could soon land you in prison. New legislation to be announced today by Assemblymen Mike LaPetrie and Michael Riley would make it a felony to throw or spray water or any other substance on an officer on duty. This charge would be punishable by up to 4 years in prison.
Okay, let's stop right there, shall we? Look, let's be real. Making the dousing of officers a felony may be impractical, okay? Logic tells us that if enacted, the crime will probably be dropped to a misdemeanor. So let's make it a misdemeanor that mandates an immediate arrest. No citation, and if they physically resist, depending upon the violence or resistance and substance, then you can go ahead and bump it up to a felony. We know that likely because of human nature. At some time in the future, some individual is going to get the bright idea of substituting, say, vinegar or gasoline or rubbing alcohol or bleach or some other clear caustic chemical for water. That's the nature of crime and criminals. Luckily, to this point, it hasn't happened. Thank God. We know that also. The most important aspect of all of this is to react right now. Not an hour from now, not tomorrow, not next week, immediately at the time of the crime. So in this instance, I got to go with Governor Cuomo, who said this with a very important major caveat.
In an update in the case of people disrespecting the badge by dousing officers with buckets of water. Several incidents were recently caught on camera in Harlem and the Bronx. Officers responding to calls getting drenched by people in the street. One officer even got hit in the head with a bucket, but they stayed calm and walked away. Today, Governor Cuomo weighed in, saying that the officers should have handled it differently.
Really?
The police officers walked away and got back in the car. That is wholly unacceptable. I don't know how we're training police officers, how when you are basically assaulted, and that's an assault, you retreat.
Police are still looking for at least 14 suspects. The NYPD warns dousing an officer will get you arrested.
Maybe. Maybe not. So Had the officers reacted immediately to their incidents and a community outrage ensued, here's what you and I already know, because past history is the best predictor of future behavior or the lack thereof, right? Had there been community outrage, both you and I know that Governor Andrew Cuomo would have been one of the first, after determining which way the prevailing political prairie winds were blowing that hour, sticking his finger up in the air in the firmament to condemn the NYPD and those officers, kicking them to the curb. He would have kicked them to the curb, guaranteed. So that's so easy for him to say in retrospect, isn't it? The streets of what I quaintly term urban rat cages are not always filled with warm and fuzzy individuals. Sometimes they really do aim to punch, kick, rob, steal, and murder. Because in the lawless community, and yes, those communities do exist, leftists to do nothing when law enforcement is faced with lawbreakers simply engenders more law-breaking and disrespect to not only authority, but the entire concept of civility in general. To do nothing and watching various NYPD officers walking away from being assaulted tells those persons in the affected neighborhoods that the cops do nothing, and therefore they mean nothing. Acting this way, acquiescing in the face of crime, tells criminals that they can do whatever they wish, and it emboldens them. It also makes the job of law enforcement infinitely tougher for cops who decide that they're going to actually enforce laws. They will now be the bad guys because, quote, the other officers didn't do anything. So, leftists, Democrats, and American media maggots, what are your answers to this? Because essentially what you're saying is that in the face of resistance, just about any amount, law enforcement should step back. One brief pause for a waft of sanity. Had somebody done that to me or any of my other fellow officers in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, no matter their ethnicity, they would have found themselves handcuffed and under arrest. Nobody did that to me or my fellow officers where an arrest failed to occur, just as Governor Cuomo indicated. We knew where the line existed, and we held that line. The laws of certain jungles apply then as now. Either you rule the jungle or the jungle rules you. Lawlessness is either accepted or it is overcome. So, you have to ask yourself a very important question. Why don't officers react that way now? Because they realize their very own departments don't or won't have their backs due to political pressure and political correctness. Again, the Ferguson effect. On August 1st of 2014, the medical examiner ruled Garner's death a homicide. According to the medical examiner's definition, a homicide is a death caused by the intentional actions of another person or persons, which is not necessarily an intentional death or a criminal death. If you're not familiar, the 5 medical legal rulings in every death are natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and undetermined. The grand jury decided not to indict. DOJ, nothing. FBI, nothing. Attorney General, nothing. And earlier this summer, federal prosecutors ended their 5-year-long probe of the matter and elected not to pursue any civil rights charges against Pantaleo. That means no 42 U.S.C. 1983 actions. Officer Pantaleo was fired after, this information is now out, after Police Commissioner James O'Neill took a phone call from Mayor Bill de Blasio over that weekend. Politics, baby. So did you ever hear about this? At a May 2019 disciplinary hearing for Pantaleo, Dr. Floriana Persicino, who performed Garner's autopsy, testified that Pantaleo's use of a chokehold on Garner set into motion a lethal consequence that led to a fatal asthma attack. However, the examiner conceded that even a bear hug could have had the same effect as a chokehold, given that Garner weighed, I was off. Garner weighed 395 pounds, suffered from asthma and diabetes, and had a heart twice the size of a healthy person's heart. Moreover, during the trial at a hearing in June 2019, a defense witness, Dr. Michael Graham in St. Louis, Missouri's chief medical examiner, testified Garner's death couldn't have been caused by a chokehold because Graham said Garner was never actually choked or unable to breathe during the arrest. Jack Alexander, you made that point in chat. Graham attributed Garner's death to heart disease exacerbated by the stress of the arrest. Imagine that. Here's another piece of an article that I'll wager you didn't hear about or read, and that is purposeful. This is an article by Dr. G. Wesley Clark. Having reviewed the video several times now and being a physician who specializes in the surgery of the very obese, I believe that the cause of Mr. Garner's death was not police brutality or negligence, but rather the unfortunate synergy between his disease of morbid obesity and actions most police perform countless times with only transient discomfort to the arrestee. The decision of the grand jury was reasonable. Mr. Garner's demise was the consequence of a confluence of many factors, most of which were beyond the ken of a policeman and which occurred in devastatingly rapid sequence. Eric Garner was very obese, said to be at least 350 pounds, 395 we know. In fact, based upon his height and appearance, he very likely weighed more than that, but very few bathroom scales read high enough to accurately measure weight of that magnitude. By simple observation, one could see that his abdomen was very large and protuberant, his chest was similarly blanketed with a heavy layer of fat, and he had no visible neck, no indentations under his jaw, typically present in non-obese persons, which permits application of a chokehold to briefly arrest the carotid circulation, to render him unconscious or manageable. The chokehold was ineffective as a control, but it served to take him to the ground by leverage. Guaranteed you didn't read about this in any American media maggot venue. Guaranteed. Then there is this. The subsequent postmortem examination is said to have shown no evidence of injury to either the larynx or the hyoid bone, which is almost always fractured in cases of strangulation. Mr. Garner is said to have died from chest compression and associated heart disease. Few persons, undoubtedly, including most police officers and even Mr. Garner, would understand the gravity and complex pathophysiology of this condition and the massive rapidity with which it can become irreversible unless an airway and mechanical ventilation can be quickly administered, and establishing an airway in a very obese person is in itself extremely challenging even under the ideal conditions, such as in an operating room, let alone on a sidewalk. Eric Garner's death had essentially nothing to do with racism or racial animosity, particularly when one can see an African-American female sergeant in charge of the scene, standing and observing the arrest in the background. Ultimately, as the senior officer on the scene, she was responsible for Mr. Garner's safety, although it would be unreasonable to incriminate her either, given the obscure physiology of the chain of events that led to his unfortunate demise. You didn't hear about that, though, did you? This is an interesting opinion piece from the Washington Examiner. Despite Eric Garner, Daniel Pantaleo doesn't deserve to be fired. Pantaleo, now 34, inadvertently became part of a ground zero for the populist uprising and social justice activists during the summer of 2014. It was then that he was dispatched to a Staten Island street corner, directed to take a 43-year-old father of 6, Eric Garner, into custody for selling single cigarettes from packs without a tax stamp, or loosies, outside a bodega. Garner's death is a vicissitude that should sadden us all, but only one person is accountable here. Let me read that over again. Only one person is accountable here. It is the man who broke the law, obstinately advised police that he wouldn't be held to account for same, and then placed everyone involved in a dangerous intersection of sworn duties and no way out choices. Garner caused this horrible incident to occur. Pantaleo will presumably pay the price for that poor decision-making as well. That's odd, because that's precisely what I've been saying. The tragic incident has undergone scrutinization from outside investigators. First, a Staten Island grand jury failed to indict the officer. Then followed a Department of Justice investigation into Pantaleo's actions to determine if Garner's civil rights had been abridged. This investigation spanned both the Obama and Trump presidential administrations and was overseen by 4 separate attorneys general. And 2 excellent points by that author that I just read, a guy named James Gagliano, who's a former FBI agent of 25 years. He wrote, "Broken Windows has been under fire in the in the woke days of 2019. But let's not pretend that its employment has not saved countless black and brown lives where perpetrators and victims of homicides in New York City are overwhelmingly black and brown. Imagine that. We're going to go into overtime. I want to remind everybody.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Now, we may debate whether or not the sale of untaxed cigarettes should be considered an arrest-worthy transgression. My point exactly. But cops don't make laws. When we have laws on the books, law enforcement professionals swear an oath to uphold them. Do we want to confront exactly what selective enforcement would look like in a country that already suffers from the belief that certain communities are treated differently with respect to the law? James Comey. After a while, having been told by various communities, this is the view of cops, after having been told by a bunch of communities that law enforcement over-polices, by their administration that they over-police, by the news media that they over-police, by their local politicians that they over-police, and certainly leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots that they over-police, would it shock you to sooner or later come to realize that law enforcement officers are going to start to take that clarion call, that clarion cry to heart? They're going to reduce their self-initiated activity or proactive responses. And simultaneously, this is occurring as well. Here's an article I found. NYPD officers' injuries spike as union blames anti-police lawmakers. NYPD cops have a new reason to walk their beat on eggshells. Officer injuries are spiking. Amid a spate of assaults on police. How did we get here? Including a melee at Brooklyn's Mary Projects that left 3 cops hurt, as well as a rash of water dousing attacks. Injuries rose 12.5% in the second quarter over the first 3 months of the year, NYPD data shows. That's up 2.5% over the same time period in 2018 and 3.5% through June over the first half of 2018. With 1,120 total injuries, April to June this year was the bloodiest quarter for cops since the final 3 months of 2016, the earliest time period of publicly available data. Injuries aren't just knee scrapes. 35 officers were seriously wounded and 47 suffered substantial injuries, the NYPD says. Police Union President Patrick Lynch, who's been warring with NYPD brass and Mayor de Blasio in the wake of Officer Daniel Pantaleo's firing, blamed the uptick on anti-police lawmakers and failed NYPD leaders, who have emboldened criminals to assault cops and resist arrest. Hello, facts and evidence, absolutely correct. And that is America's current narrative with regard to law enforcement. Cops are human. Their job is to do the job. Their job is also to go home in one piece at the end of their shifts. And like all others, they have to look out for themselves and their families. So they're going to have to make some very considered decisions. Here's a decision. This just occurred recently last week. NYPD union tells cops to ask supervisor permission before arresting anybody. And again, from New York, the police union put out a list of guidelines for officers to follow on the Monday after New York Police Department Commissioner James O'Neill fired Officer Daniel Pantaleo in connection with the death of Eric Garner, despite the fact that a grand jury, and a federal investigation, 4 of them, had exonerated him. The mandate, the memo went out, said, "Be advised that neither your police academy training nor the current patrol guide procedures reflect the precedent established by this decision." Police Benevolent Association President Patrick Lynch wrote in a memo, a copy of which has been obtained here. Lynch warned Commissioner O'Neill's termination of Officer Pantaleo set a dangerous precedent and fundamentally changed the nature of our job when he allowed politics to determine Officer Pantaleo's fate with regard for the facts. The memo encouraged officers to uphold our oath and continue doing their jobs, but reminded them We must remain united to protect each other from the toxic political environment in which we are forced to work. On Monday, the PBA accused Commissioner O'Neill of rolling over for City Hall and for doing Mayor Bill de Blasio's bidding. In order to be in exact compliance with the patrol guide, these are guidelines, these are rules set down by NYPD. Officers will have to do a lot of things in a very specified way that in the past was unofficially left to officers' discretion. The reasoning is, of course, to ensure that the officers have the authority to conduct business. They're also saying that if they're to be held perfectly accountable, they must act or react as the guidelines are specifically written. The memo continues, for every job involving a possible arrest situation, immediately request response by patrol supervisor and additional members to help control situation pursuant to PG 221-02 use of force. The PBA memo instructed officers in accordance with NYPD policy. That's NYPD policy. Await the patrol supervisor's arrival before attempting to effect an arrest, except when immediate action is necessary to protect life and personal safety of all persons. See PG 221-02. Prior to effecting an arrest, confer with the patrol supervisor, the memo said, and reminded officers to use their body cams and document in your memo book all instructions received from the patrol supervisor or other supervisors at the scene. I have a translation for you on that. There are 3 letters. CYA, that means cover your ass. The memo also reminded officers that anytime a suspect doesn't voluntarily submit to being handcuffed, they need to request an ESU unit, an emergency services unit, which is the equivalent of, SWAT. Before they can take that suspect into custody, officers should attempt to isolate and contain the suspect while they wait for ESU to arrive. As per NYPD official policy. If those are the standards, the PBA is saying, then that's what we have to meet. It's very well known that for a majority of circumstances, the patrol guide is not followed to a T because you'd never get anything done, the official told Blue Lives Matter. It's just too inefficient to do everything that way. But those are the standards to which cops will be held in New York. The PBA memo to its members also reminded officers that they must call for an ambulance every single time there is a use of force, regardless of whether anybody has claimed to be injured. Do not transport the prisoner until he or she has been evaluated by EMS personnel, the PBA wrote. The memo also told officers to be sure and do their paperwork completely and as soon as possible for every incident. Well, when you're under the gun, as is law enforcement today, what are the choices remain? The NYPD official told Blue Lives Matter that most officers save paperwork to complete at the end of their shift so they can get back out on the street faster when they complete a call. But the policy says they have to do all paperwork immediately after a call is completed. So I think you can see the issues here. It's called quid pro quo or back and forth. Give and take. No more. It's all wanted one way. Now in California here, spelled with a K, things got a little bit worse for law enforcement officers here. Gavin Newsom signed a landmark police use of force bill. And we'll see where this goes. Because Gavin Newsom didn't sign it for law enforcement. Certainly not. California will soon have a tougher new legal standard for the use of deadly force by police under legislation Governor Gavin Newsom signed that was inspired by last year's fatal shooting of a young unarmed man in Sacramento. The governor contends that with Assembly Bill AB 392 in place, police will turn increasingly to de-escalation techniques, including verbal persuasion, weapons other than guns, and other crisis intervention methods. Under the new law, which takes effect January 1st, 2020, police may use deadly force only when, this is a quote, necessary in defense of human life. That is a steeper standard than prosecutors apply now, which says officers can shoot when doing so is, quote, reasonable, unquote. One of the most significant changes will allow prosecutors to consider officers' actions leading up to a shooting when deciding whether deadly force is justified. Some police administrators, and I've heard them, I've read them on various blogs, are saying, calm down. There's no difference. Nothing has changed. Changing the word reasonable to necessary, And how will you determine necessary? Obviously, only at the end of an event. And what is reasonable to an officer in terms of reaction is no longer of consideration. In other words, what would other reasonable officers have done in a similar situation? And that's how you get the Ferguson effect. I can tell you quite frankly, there are a number of officers in California that are not overjoyed with this. But we'll see how this plays out and whether the point is just cop bashing. Because if it gets to the point where going home at night takes precedence over everything else, cops are human. What do you want from your law enforcement? Start making up your minds. It would appear that throughout all of this, leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots, they're getting what they want. This is from Fox26Houston.com. There is a significant drop in people wanting to become police officers. Imagine that. And one officer says that he thinks he has a pretty good idea why.
Significant drop in the number of people who want to become police officers across this country and right here in Houston. One officer says he knows why. Take a look. Joe, when we talk about a shortage of police officers, we have a shortage here in Houston and also around the country because you're national vice president of FOP, Fraternal Police.
Yeah, you know, we've seen law enforcement applications actually go down by 63% in this country last year. And what you're really seeing is people no longer want to take up the profession of being a police officer. And I feel like a direct result of that is all of the anti-police rhetoric and the false narratives that are out there right now. And we're actually seeing educated people that we want to bring into the police department are voting with their feet and they're taking up other professions.
So what can you do about the negative narrative that's out there about police officers? What are you guys working on both here in Houston and nationally?
So we're always reaching out to the community. We're going into the schools. We're trying to convince people, hey, we're the good guys. We're out here to help you. But mostly what we're trying to get across to people is comply with the officer out on the scene. If you're unhappy with the result of it, then go ahead and file a complaint. Because a lot of these viral incidents and the things we're seeing could all be avoided if the person were to comply with the officer's orders. And
isn't that's unique? Wait, no one ever told people to do that before. Comply first? Are you kidding? What an incredibly wacky concept.
If we're wrong, well then by all means we need to be held accountable. But the time to argue and fight about it is not on the side of the street, and it's not doing us any good.
And of course you do have to admit though, there are some bad police officers out there. A small percentage, but there are some bad ones that give you guys a bad name.
Absolutely. There are bad apples out there that are giving us a bad name. One police officer can do untold harm. But what I tell folks is it's no different than any other profession. Just
Bingo.
because a doctor loses a patient on a table to a mistake they made, do we now start yelling at every single doctor? Do we stop going to our doctor's appointments? Do we resist doctors that are giving us advice? Of course not. It's the same thing with police work. Just because we have a bad apple doesn't mean you demonize the entire profession.
Do you think diversity on the police force or forces around the country would help out where you have individuals who look like the police officer that may be stopping them?
Sure. I mean, I think diversity is important in any field. And right now...
Okay, stop. Do you think Washington, D.C., Washington Metro, D.C. police aren't diverse? Do you think Baltimore PD isn't diverse? Do you think most of the managers in Baltimore, D.C., and Chicago are all Caucasoids? Do you think that's true? You'd be terribly wrong.
We have a majority-minority department here in Houston that really reflects the city that we have. I think it's important that diversity in every single police department, but I also want people to know our officers are professional enough. They've never been better trained. They've never been better educated than they are right now. And regardless of their race, they're going to provide you that service that they should be providing. They're going to respect you. But
okay, with a big-ass caveat, they're also human. And another big-ass caveat, and I've said this for years. Who's your gene pool for cops? Look around you right now. Consider your gene pool, whether you're in, I don't know, Frog Dick, North Dakota, in a town of 50 or a county of 1,000, who's your gene pool? Who's your gene pool in New York? Who's your gene pool in San Francisco? Who's your gene pool in Broward County? Hey, who's your gene pool in Portland? Who's your gene pool in Seattle? Well, gosh, that would probably be the latter end of millennials and Gen Zers. What do we know about Gen Zers and millennials? When I was range master, I used to be responsible for taking the firearms of people that are leaving the department. And this was even back in the mid-2000s. And I would make it a point of asking them as they were leaving, because they're all young people, very seldom older officers. And I would ask them, because I was curious, say, why are you leaving the department? And what I would get is this. I don't like my supervisor. I can't grow a beard here. I don't like the color of the uniform. The car seats aren't comfortable. I don't like the guns. You want me to keep my hair too short. I don't like the hours. You make me work overtime. And so on. Now, what do you think the differences are now? Gene pool, baby. Please remember this also. At the same time law enforcement is attacked and themselves handcuffed, the LDAM, and this is critical, and notice, please notice, this is purposeful. The LDAM, the leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots are waging war against your Second Amendment rights and your ability to defend yourself. Who defends you if law enforcement is stymied and your rights are removed? The entire point of tonight's special report is this. What do you want from your law enforcement officers? At what point do you demand that they back down? Is it a sliding scale in terms of the initial crime committed? Is it a sliding scale of the resistance encountered? Because you have to realize that in terms of any and every crime encountered by law enforcement, persons are going to resist every rule and regulation at some point. They're going to resist speaking to an officer, signing a citation, getting out of a car, refusing to submit to handcuffing, and more. Every law created has the potential for resistance, including smoking in a bar, vaping in a doorway, onesies. Cops are called. What do you really want them to do when they're faced with resistance? Ask yourself, what do you want from law enforcement? What do you want them to do? Nothing? Well, then why are you sending them to calls for service in the first place if you don't intend them to enforce the law? I repeat, the bottom line is this. Citizens, what kind of law enforcement do you really want? After many decades in law enforcement, I do know this. People get the kind of law enforcement they deserve. The Ferguson effect is real because cops are human just like everybody else, unless you want RoboCop, and perhaps that might not be that far off. So I say, you know what? Good luck. Watch out. You might get what you're after. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, B-Z-E-P, and on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And also by Pratt & Whitney Engines Thrust. You can trust. Tiaras are by My Little Pony. Also thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team with whom I will be consorting. Guaranteed you can bank on it in less than an hour. Thank you ever so kindly for listening live. Thanks to Alan Thomas tonight for the first hour. Thanks to you for being in chat. And thanks for listening in podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy day or night to do so. Have a great weekend. I'll see you Tuesday night. So, God bless, take care, and be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.